Okay, welcome back to our Lit 4 class, week 5. We'll be talking about our three stories, a New England Nun, A&P, and the comeback. Okay, so our first story is written by Mary Wilkins Freeman, who was born in Randolph, Massachusetts, not too far from here, in 1852. And she lives most of her life here in New England and eventually moves to New Jersey and passes away in 1930. She is often classified as a local color writer, and that means that she attempts to capture the distinct characteristics of regional America, and in this case, Yankeedom. So she spends the first 50 years of her life in rural villages of New England. And as we talked about before, this is uh, okay. She's born before the Civil War, but as an adult, um, she sees the destruction uh, that has happened as a result of the Civil War. And in New England in particular, this area is suffering from severe economic depression. Um, the combination of the fatalities and the wounded coming back from the Civil War, combined with a westward expansion where men who survived the Civil War were actually leaving the rural farming areas of New England in search for cheaper, better opportunities out west. This is kind of the beginning of the industrialization of the cities in the New England area. And that takes a large number of any young men that are left moving from the countryside to the city in search of non agricultural farming jobs. So, what remains in these rural villages in New England is a population largely female, elderly, struggling to earn a living and keeping up appearances, which means that they're trying to get back to pre Civil War economies and lifestyle. And they're finding it very difficult to do. In addition to this fact, is the beginnings of the women's suffrage movement. Now, if you were a woman back then in almost all of the world, you do not have the right to vote in a democratic society. Now, there were a few places that did allow women to vote. New Jersey, shortly after the Revolutionary War, women were granted the right to vote. They weren't really granted it. It was the way that the state constitution was written said anyone who's over a certain age that owns land has the right to vote. So that was one. Wyoming, a state out in the West, is just a territory, but they're seeking statehood. And actually, the federal government is really keen to add them into their state federal organization. What it comes down to is Wyoming had, as a territory, given women the right to vote. And the federal government said, you want to join our club, women can't vote. So Wyoming says, okay, we don't want to be a state. And the federal government says, hey, wait a minute, let's talk about this. Okay. All right, women can vote in your state. Uh, a kind of odd place. This becomes an international movement. It actually starts at a convention that is held in England in 1840. It's an anti slave convention. Some women representatives from America go there. They're not seated in the convention. They're not able to vote on the articles that are being talked about in the convention. They get all upset, rightfully so. So this kind of starts things when they come back to USA in the 1840s. Also, is a little island out in the middle of the Pacific. It's called Pitcairn Island. It's the scene, a true story of the mutiny on the Bounty. If you've ever read that book or seen that movie, ship captain's kind of a jerk, and his crew throws him overboard with all of his followers, give him a boat, say we're taking over the ship, and it's called a mutiny, and they land on this little sort of deserted island called Pitcairn Island, and that's where they hide out from the authorities for years. And the women that were on the island do end up having the right to vote, the descendants of those early mutineers. So, again, this becomes a worldwide movement. It's definitely felt here, and Mary Wilkins Freeman is very much in favor of early on women's rights. So, uh, Freeman becomes famous for her unsentimental and realistic portrayals of these people in her short stories. She writes, quote, "A young writer should follow the safe course of writing only about those subjects she knows thoroughly." End quote. This is exactly what she did, exploring the often peculiar and nearly always strong-willed New England temperament in short stories. And New England does have a reputation of its people being very strong-willed, a little on the argumentative side, and not changing their minds. Many of her stories concern female characters who are unmarried spinsters or widows, often living alone and supporting themselves. It was a situation she knew well. She herself did not marry until age of 50, and her marriage was an unhappy one. She separated from her husband and spent the last years of her life with friends and relatives. Now, again, this is kind of why it's important to really know and understand the backdrop of the authors of our readings. Even though it's fiction, they often portray parts of their own life, or characters are based in part on people they knew, maybe a combination of characters that they knew combined into one character, that sort of thing. So, this particular story really parallels one of her early love connections in her life. New England Nun is that part, including Hanson Taylor, a naval ensign who Freeman apparently had a crush on. They had a relationship, but he would be gone for long periods of time when he was out to sea, returning only uh, infrequently. Uh, and she's really writing about that experience with her relationship with Hanson Taylor. So, Wilkins Freeman starts off her story, and it's in the afternoon. She's in her house. She's very busy doing some kind of sewing. It's called quilting. And the name of our first character is Louisa Ellis. And she's sitting by the window and she's doing this thing called quilting, which is you make a blanket covering out of a patchwork of different materials, sew them all together. They had these, sometimes women would get together and do this. It's called a quilting bee, where they would make their families these quilts, these very warm blankets for the wintertime. You still find them today. They're very valuable. Sometimes they had patriotic themes of stars and stripes and that sort of thing. But sometimes it was just a patchwork of different materials that they sew together. Okay, so Louisa Ellis is busy sewing. She's a very dainty lady, um, very obsessive about cleanliness, polishing things, cleaning windows, doesn't like any dust. Everything has its place. Everything's put in order. So this is very much part of her character. Um, she has been waiting for her future husband. His name is Daggett, and he has been gone for 14 years. They got engaged. He says, "I'm not making enough money on the farm. I'm going to go to Australia where there is a gold rush, another gold rush, and to seek his fame and fortune, or at least his fortune, anyway." And this is actually true. About 10,000 American young men left America to go to Australia in search of gold or other financial opportunities. We even had one of our past relatives that went down there, never came back. There's a whole bunch of family cousins that are down there in Australia, descendants of that first ancestor that went there for the gold rush in 1850s or so. So anyway, Daggett is one of those American fortune seekers that goes to Australia. It takes him 14 years to make enough money to come back. He is successful, but she's been waiting for his return for the past 14 years. She's been living alone, taking care of herself, taking care of her house, uh, and she has been become very settled in her ways of doing things. So, nevertheless, um, Daggett comes back. They are starting to prepare for the marriage, which is a month or so away. And he has his own house down the road where he and his mother live, and they have a caretaker that takes care of the mother. And the mother's kind of a cranky old biddy, complaining all the time. A tough old bird, as they say. And so Louisa knows that when they get married, she's going to have to give up her small little house and move in to Daggett's bigger house with her mother, with his mother, and so she's a little thinks about that a little bit, concerned about how that's going to work out. So um, the story comes that Daggett every maybe a couple times a week will come back from farming and meet with Louisa, uh, share a conversation, have a cup of tea or whatever. And he comes in and he's really kind of a big, bulky guy. He's just the complete opposite of Louisa. She's very dainty and precise, and he's not. We have a saying, a bull in a china shop, and that's Daggett. Daggett's the bull in this very organized, clean house. He tracks dirt in. He kind of, there's a little table and there's some books, and he takes the books out of order, places them back in a different order. She reaches over and puts them back the way they were that she had set up. And that's how obsessive she is with her orderly little life. So um, when Daggett comes in, he makes kind of a ruckus noise that disturbs a little canary, a little bird that's in a cage. Whenever he comes in, the bird gets all excited and makes all kinds of noise until he leaves. Outside is a dog that has been with Louisa for years. His name is Caesar. And when Caesar was a puppy, he bit the neighbor pretty badly, and they were going to destroy the dog. But somehow the end result was they had to chain Caesar up in the backyard and never let him loose to be free. And she feeds him every day. She feeds him a meal made of corn, called corn cakes. He's pretty old now. He just basically sits in the shade. He's chained up. No freedom. Daggett doesn't like this at all. He wants to set the dog free. He says this is cruel, and it is. And she feeds the dog these corn cakes, but never any meat because she's afraid that it will awaken his wild instincts and he'll turn into a wolf or something. And she wants to keep him passive. Uh, so Story goes on, a little time goes by, they still have these meetings, they continue to plan their wedding, and um, Louisa is starting to worry a little bit about this getting married and moving in with the cranky old lady, and it's going to be really disruptive of her present lifestyle. But, you know, she made a promise, he made a promise, they're keeping their promises. It's a day or two before the wedding. Uh, Louisa decides to take a walk at night. And, it's again very descriptive, a very beautiful night. Uh, she is walking along this stone wall, and she talks about the orchard that she's passing by, and the sky, and the air, and very descriptive. So this stone wall has a lot of uh, trees that and grapes that kind of overhang the wall. So it creates these little alcove areas that are kind of out of sight, and you're in your own enclosed little environment. So she finds a comfortable place for herself, and she sits down to kind of take in the environment, quiet and peaceful. But she's surrounded by this overgrowth of trees and grapevines and that sort of thing. So she's kind of contemplating things, and she hears some footsteps coming down the road. She's not quite sure what to do. Does she kind of jump out and and show herself, or does she just wait to let the people pass by? She's kind of hidden away. Maybe they'll just walk by and not notice her. But it's here's the two people, and they find this little overgrowth alcove area very near her, so she decides just to stay there. And the two people are talking, and she recognizes that the voice is that of her dad, and he is talking to another woman whose name is Lil Dwyer. Now, Lil Dwyer has been the caretaker of Daggett's mother. So she overhears the conversation, and the conversation says uh, that Lil and Daggett have a kind of a romantic um, situation going on, unbeknownst to Louisa. And Daggett says, "Hey, I made a promise, and I'm going through with it." And Lil says, I understand. And Daggett says, you should find somebody else. And Lil says, I'll never love anyone else but you, and I'm going to leave town. And Daggett says, hey, no, don't do that. We'll just go on with our lives like this never happened, and no one will be the wiser. And I don't want to break Luis's heart. And that's trying to be an honorable guy, and that's just the way it's going to happen. But Lil, again, very strong character. She says, "No, I made up my mind. I'm going to leave, and I'll never marry anyone because I only love you. Now, Lisa is shocked by this. She doesn't say anything. Uh, the two characters, Daggett and Lil, leave. Louisa goes back home. She thinks about the situation. The next day, Daggett comes over as usual, getting ready for the wedding, making their final plans. And she never mentions that she overhears the conversation from the night before. Somehow she becomes very tactful and diplomatic. And basically, she says to Daggett, you know, really set in my ways here. Moving in with your mother to the big house is going to be really disruptive. I like my things. I like my lifestyle. I don't want to go through with the marriage. Okay, Daggett's off the hook. He doesn't have to say anything. And basically, um, Louisa does spend the rest of her life alone with her things as she wants uh, till the end of the story. So, a couple of symbolism things. Caesar is chained to his small little piece of the world. I guess you could say Louisa, by her choice, decides to chain herself to her created world for the past 14 years. And so basically, this is where the story ends. Uh, and the analogy is Louisa sat prayerfully numbering her days like an uncloistered nun. So, in a way, her lifestyle has become that of a religious female called a nun that would just stay in a church environment for the rest of her life. So, that's basically the summary of the story. And so this really does parallel uh, our author's life in many ways. Okay, so our next story, A and P, was written in 1961. So, much more contemporary story. Uh, Author John Updike, born in 1932, and he passes away in 2006. He's a Pulitzer Prize winner. He's published 60 novels in his lifetime, about a book a year. Uh, he was the valedictorian in his high school class. Uh, he was born in, I think, Pennsylvania, but he settles in a small town in northern coastal Massachusetts called Ipswich. He graduates from his high school, and he was the senior class president, and he goes to Harvard University on a scholarship. And he eventually, through his writing and fame, He teaches briefly at Boston University, and one of his novels becomes a film. It's called The Witches of Eastwick. That was in 1987. And that was filmed right here in my hometown and in the neighboring towns. And it's kind of a really bizarre story. You have a chance to see the movie. Uh, okay, so he's giving an interview about his writing and his work. He says, basically, quote, my subject is the American Protestant small town middle class. Uh, he tells in 1966 for Life magazine. Life magazine is a huge uh, pictorial and story magazine about famous weekly newsworthy events. He says, I like middles, he continued. It's in the middles that extremes clash, where ambiguity restlessly rules. So, what he's talking about is that people who are in the middle class, okay, on the one hand, you have poor, on the other hand, you have the ultra rich, and the middle class is somewhere in between, and it's always a clash between all of these different socioeconomic groups and lifestyles and rules. Okay, so somewhat based on a true story. As a kid, he does work as a clerk in a supermarket, and in America in 1960s, 70s, is a large franchise supermarket chain called A&P. It was a company that originally was a seller of tea. They branched out and became a supermarket, something like a Spar or like the Spars that you have in Europe, or the Aldi. Okay, so he's a clerk. It's near the coast, but not on the coast. So maybe one town inland from the coast. So three girls, uh, young girls, walk into the local A&P grocery store, and our narrator uh, is 19 years old, and he sees the girls walking in, and they're not wearing appropriate clothing, especially during these times, 1960s. They're just wearing their beachwear, their bathing suits. Now, this is not usual. Women coming from the beach and men coming from the beach, they put on a shirt at least, have decent kind of footwear. This phenomenon where people would just come from the beach and start coming into stores, coffee shops, in just their bathing suits. Was not an isolated incident. It 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 pushed store owners and storekeepers to put signs outside their stores that said, "Have a shirt, no bare feet." Uh, you have to be dressed appropriately to come into the store. But these three girls come into the store barefoot, just wearing their bathing suits, cause a stir. Okay. Uh, Sammy is our narrator, and he's 19 years old, uh, but he doesn't really have a lot going on. Um, I'm not sure if he's college bound or not. Um, he's the guy behind the cash register. He's kind of flippant. Um, he thinks he can analyze human behavior very well, other people's, but he's not introspective enough to be able to understand his own character very well. Still a teenager in many ways. So, of course, he's kind of oogling the girls that come in, and a couple of them are pretty nice looking, and he is doing kind of human behavior analysis on the girls as they come in. And he's watching them kind of move throughout the store. He noticed one of them is kind of the leader, and the other two he calls the sheep. Of course, he's not paying attention to what he's doing. And there's an older a woman getting her groceries checked through. He's not paying attention to ringing things up. He misses something. The woman catches him making a mistake. She chastises him. He calls her kind of a witch. And, his fault. He should have been paying attention to what he's doing and not keeping his eye on the pretty girls walking through the supermarket. So, anyway, the girls are running through, looking at this, looking at that, not buying a lot. They kind of have something in mind that they're looking for. Uh, they're really kind of looking for some high priced grocery items, something you'd have at a well to do family party, some kind of like a sour cream and herring dish that a little on the expensive side that would be something at a wine party that wealthy people might serve. Okay, so of course, the girls are really causing a scene throughout the supermarket. And he's got a partner about his same age, but he's married. Uh, and his name is Storsky. And he's oogling the girls too, and they're making little sidebar comments about their looks and the perceived personality of these girls. The other shoppers are a little shocked by the clothes, the bathing suits that these girls are running around the store in. So they're really kind of upsetting the apple cart. Um, the girls buy what they're looking for, and they come up to Sammy's counter, and they're ringing their things through, and then the manager comes in from outside, and he's a older older guy, and his name is Langell, and he's kind of the male authority figure, and he represents the rules of society. He's also a Sunday school teacher. So he makes a comment to the girls. Hey, girls, next time you come, put something, put something on. Okay, you're causing a scene here in the store. And the leader, the Sammy nicknames Queenie. Queenie kind of speaks up and she said, "Oh, she blames her parents that wants this herring snack for a party." And It's not really her fault. So, you know, Langel's not listening to it really. Come on, next time, make sure you're dressed appropriately. So, um, Sammy is kind of taken aback a little bit. He thinks that Langell has gone over the top uh, and has embarrassed the girls. So Sammy makes a scene. He takes his bow tie off. He takes his apron off, folds it up, and he's gonna quit. He does this in front of the girls to look like the hero. And Langell is friends with Sammy's parents. He says, "Hey, you don't want to do this. Parents are not going to be happy. You're not going to win this battle." Sammy's stubborn-headed, and he quits anyway. So he walks out the door. See if the girls are still there, hoping they'd recognize him, and they're gone. So he looks back in the store, and Langell has jumped into the position that Sammy was working, and Sammy knows there's no way he can go back. Now he's thinking, oh boy, I think I made a mistake. My parents are really going to be angry with me. And he wonders if it was all worth it. And he actually had absolutely no chance of meeting these girls for a date or getting a date with them or whatsoever. They're from two distinct social classes. Okay, so some of the themes in the story are about growing up, gender, power, appearances and inner lives, individualism, ethics, and class distinction. So, it's a real quick introduction to the style of John Updike. He really took on the scene as a writer during the 60s and 70s. He he used to stutter. He had a real difficult time speaking, but he somehow overcomes this and he becomes a major celebrity again through the 60s and 70s. So, real quick introduction to the writing of John Updike. So, our next story is called The Comeback by Elizabeth Van Steenwyck. She's born in 1928 in Illinois, which is the furthest point west of our regional area, Yankeedom. She's 92 years old now, and she lives in California. She owns a large grape vineyard, and she has a little company that produces wine. She's the winner of many awards for her work. Work encompasses quite a variety of stories, everything from history uh, to adult literature, kids' books, numerous magazine stories. She's published about 65 books in her career. And one of her stories, called The Best Horse, was adopted as a 90-minute made-for-TV movie for PBS, Public Broadcasting System, which is America's equivalent to the BBC. So, our story today is the comeback, and we have three main characters: uh, Lori, Jenny Jordan, and a minor character called Kathy. So, the themes involved in this are honesty, good sportsmanship, and it asks the question, is winning everything? Okay, so basically, our story setting takes place at an ice skating rink. I'm not sure exactly where. It's somewhere near Connecticut. And Lori is recovering from a car accident that has injured her knee. Now, she has been the lead uh, contestant contender for the singles ice dance. She has the possibility, if she wins tonight's contest, to go on eventually to the Olympics, which is her goal. So she's done well up to this to the point of the accident. She's had to take 6 months off to recover, and it is healing, but it's still her knee is still very tender. She has to be very careful about what she does. Now, it's called a routine, is what when the girls go skating on the ice, a dance routine. And there are two important parts to the dance. One, of course, is the routine itself, and then the other is the accompanying music. So, Lori is preparing to go out onto the ice. She's lacing up her skates. She is welcomed back by the sub character, Kathy. Hey, glad to see you back. Good luck to you tonight. We know it's an important event for you. But one little problem is we have a new contestant coming in from Connecticut, and her name is Jenny Jordan. And she does this very difficult maneuver called a triple toe loop. So what that is you basically get a good running start, you jump up in the air, you spin yourself around 3 times, and then hopefully land on the ice gracefully. Now, Lori doesn't want to do this particular maneuver because she knows that it's going to or potentially damage her knee again. But under the circumstances, she has no choice now. If Jenny Jordan does this maneuver, she's going to have to do it in her routine as well. Okay, enters our other character, Jenny Jordan, into the dressing room. She's carrying a big bag with all her skates and costume and all of that sort of thing. And she throws it down on a chair, but the bag is not zipped up properly, and everything falls out onto the floor. Kathy says, "Jenny, you're up next. Um, Make sure you give the music to the audio guy for your routine." And Jenny says, "Oh, I already gave it to him." And uh, Kathy says, "Well, he's looking for it. She says, "Oh, it's the little green cassette box with the initials JJ." And Kathy says, "Well, you can't find it." So she and Kathy and Jenny go talk to the audio guy. She's pretty sure she gave it to him, but we'll go help him find it. So Lori is left in the dressing room by herself. She decides to do some exercises to prepare her knee for her triple toe loop. She goes over to the chair where Jenny had thrown her bag, and she notices out of the corner of her eye a little green box. She reaches down to pick it up, and it has the initials JJ written on it. And she realizes that Jenny did not give the music to the audio guy. It's here, and she kind of wrestles with her conscience. It's like she has the good angel here and the devil over here, and they're kind of going back and forth in her subconscious. And she's thinking, if Jenny doesn't have her music, then this is a really easy win for me, and I'm off to the Olympics. But she wrestles with that, and she finally decides, that's that's not the right thing to do. It's not good sportsmanship like. It's not honest, and I would feel guilty later. So she informs Jenny that she did find the tape. Uh, Jenny goes out and does her routine. She does her triple toe loop. She scores very well on the dance routine. And now Lori has to go out and kind of defend her potential title. And she's really kind of nervous at this point. She's hasn't been in competition for 6 months. She's very worried about her injury, and she's doubly worried about doing a triple toe loop in her routine. Because if she damages her knee again, her career potentially could be over for the future. She does her routine. She dances beautifully. She waits for the judge's score. She has a very high score, higher than Jenny Jordan, and she wins the competition. So she is on her way to the Olympics. So they're back in the dressing room, and Lori says Kathy says to Lori, "Lori, you won, you won," Kathy screamed as she rushed up to her. "Yeah, I guess I did," was all Lori could manage. Then, as she put on her blade guards and walked back to the dressing room, she thought, "But no one will ever know how close I came to losing." Well, losing her self respect, um, losing in a way by cheating to win. Okay. So that's kind of a little moral of the story. A very quick, easy read. So that concludes our story, The Comeback. And we'll take a look again at a few chapters of our novel, The Abundance of Catherines. Okay, so we're going to talk about our novel that we're reading, An Abundance of Catherines. And The boys have landed at the at uh, Lindsay's mother's house, um, and they're going to stay there for a while. And Lindsay's mother's name is Hollis, and Hollis wants and is willing to pay the boys to go out and tape record interviews with the local people in the village. Really, it's even smaller than a town. I guess you'd call it a village. And about the factory that are connected to the factory. And she says that she's doing this project for her grandkids, and she doesn't want a gossip fest. Okay, so she doesn't want to really hear the details of the local gossip being thrown into this project. Um, and she's looking for about 6 hours for each individual interview as a backdrop material for her project. Now, when Hollis uh, explains this to Colin and Hassan, um, Lindsay says a swear word. And this area of America is deeply fundamentalist Christian. The church plays a big part in the community. People reference the Bible a lot in their everyday speech, even today. So there's this kind of backdrop of um, correct language to use. And both Lindsay and Hollis swear a lot, but they're trying to break that bad habit. So in the house is a little jar, okay, a little glass jar. And they promised each other in a way to break their bad habit that every time they swear, they have to put a quarter, 25 cents, into the swear jar. They call it the swear jar. So Lindsay has just said a swear word. Hollis calls her out on it, says, okay, put 25 cents in the swear jar. Lindsay only has $1. So she swears 3 more times to bring the penalty up to $1. And she puts $1 in the swear jar. Kind of a cute little family custom. So the next morning, they go on their first interview. And they go visit the house of a man named Starnes. And Starnes is very old. They open the door and they meet Starnes. And Starnes has his jaw is missing. He looks very distorted. And he notices the boys kind of staring at him and he says, oh, it's cancer. Yeah. Okay. So Starnes invites them in. They sit down. Colin must have a super sense of smell because he's kind of coming into the new environment. He smells something again that reminds him of Catherine 19's basement. When they were dating, they used to go hide out and watch movies together. And he starts reminiscing in his mind about those days. So he's not really paying close attention to what's going on. So actually, Lindsay and Hassan conduct the interview. So Starnes is his house has no air conditioning, and it gets really hot and humid in Tennessee in the summertime. So they're there for quite a while, and Colin makes a comment that he's really getting uncomfortable with the heat, and it's really hard to make $100. Okay. Yep, it is. No kidding. It's called work. Okay, so um, Lindsay is kind of odd in a way. I mean, with the boys and with her mother, she speaks in one way, but when she's with the old timers, she puts on this really heavy, thick kind of southern accent. We're not quite sure why she does that. I think she's just trying to show that she's a local girl and she kind of behaves within the local code of speech. So, Starnes has stayed in the area for his entire life. He started to work at the factory when he was very young, and he worked there for 60 years. So, of course, now he's retired and he gets a retirement benefit from the factory. And he talks about Lindsay's father, and this is the first mention of a father in the story. His name is Alex, and Starnes calls him kind of a bad name. We don't know the backdrop of Lindsay's father yet, but he doesn't seem to be well liked by anyone. However, Starnes does remark about the Lindsay's great grandfather, Dr. Zinzenvar, who originally came to the area and created the textile mill and hired the local people there. Now, there was a time back in the 20s and 30s, it's called the Great Depression. And a lot of people were out of work, a lot of people lost their homes. It's a very tragic time in American history. But the factory was still up and running. And Dr. Dinzenbach had to lay off some of the employees. But what he did was, this was kind of a very nice thing to do, was he made sure that at least one member of every family had at least one person still working in the factory so that each family had some kind of financial resources coming in to help get them through the depression times. So he was really kind of well liked, well known, respected owner of the textile mill. And we find out later that Hollis really wants to carry on that tradition, but we're getting there. So um, the boys finish the interview. The Lindsay wants to go back to the general store where her boyfriend, TOC, is kind of watching over things while Lindsay's out doing the interviews. So she tells Colin and Hassan, hey, get lost. I want to spend some romantic time with the boyfriend. Don't come back until 5:30. So Colin and Hassan jump in the car, drive around the countryside. They're talking, and these two boys have a kind of unusual relationship with each other. They both tease each other somewhat brutally at times, and it comes to a point where they agree and decide that when one of them is teasing the other to a point that touches a real soft spot, that they're going to say a word, and the word is dingleberry, and it means a fool or stupid. And they agree that if one of them says dingleberry, that the other will stop teasing the other boy. And they do agree to it, and throughout the story, they do shout out the secret word several times as they're teasing each other. The uh, the other thing that happens is uh, Colin thinks he should call the ex girlfriend friend Catherine 19, and Hassan says this is a really bad idea. You never call your ex girlfriend, and they get kind of into a little, not really argument, but Collins kind of really thinks he should go through it, and Hassan eventually talks him out of doing it. Okay, so that was close. Again, Hassan kind of keeps an eye on Colin for these social norms that Colin doesn't seem to have a very good handle on. Okay, so they come back to the gunshot general store on 5:30, about an hour early. They come in the store, they interrupt Lindsay, TOC, having a kissy face time on the couch. They're truly uh, angry about being interrupted. So the conversation they have with TOC, he realizes now that the boys are going to be staying at the house with Lindsay and Hollis, and he's kind of a jealous guy. And he basically says, uh, if uh, if Colin or Hassan touches Lindsay in any way while they're living with her, I'll kill you. Okay. So, of course, at this point, nobody has any intentions of doing anything of the kind. So, all right. So they go back to Hollis's house, and they have a cookout outside. They're going to eat dinner outside, and this is the first time that Colin sees the backyard to the house, and it's huge. And he's totally amazed at the size of it. Now, he's a city kid. Nobody has a backyard. If you do, it's like 2 foot by 2 foot. Okay, and here's this huge, wide open spaces. So he has a kind of he's kind of amazed by all of this, and he decides to call his parents to let them know where he's staying and that he's all right. So he calls the parents and he says, you know, I'm going to be staying with these nice people. Lindsay and Hollis is her mother, and we're staying here in Gunshot, Tennessee. And the parents are not too happy about this. They know that Colin is severely lacking in not only social skills, but he's too trusting and very naive. So he tries to convince them on his own, but the parents aren't buying it, and they say to him, "Can we speak to Hollis, Lindsay's mother?" And he hands the phone to Hollis, and Hollis is quite uh, gregarious and is a parent too, and she, realizes that she comforts Colin's parents and kind of shows them that they're in a safe place and they'll be fine. So the parents kind of give in and okay, it's okay to stay. Colin's mother hopes that he kind of gets his social skills in order and becomes more of a normal kid. And this staying at the house might be a chance for him to do that. Okay, so they go and going to have their next interview the next day. Hollis is crashed out on the couch. She seems to sleep on the couch at night with the falling asleep to the TV on the like the home shopping network covered in papers from her work. And she leaves a note on the kitchen table for the boys for their next interview. And um, I, I think at this one here, they're going to go to an old folks home where some of the lady retirees are living now. And what Hollis wants to do, she says, the 6 hour thing is too much. I basically just want you from now on to ask four basic questions. And so they have to drive for a while. Lindsay goes with them. She knows these four ladies that they're going to interview. And again, they come up to the nursing home. They meet the four ladies. Lindsay is kind of the favored person. And she again breaks into this real Southern accent, acting very differently with them than she does with Colin and Hassan. So, Colin notices this, and the ladies really think that Lindsay is really kind of, they haven't seen her in a while, and they think she's grown up and she's really pretty looking, and she's kind of the favorite girl. And they they interview the four women, and again that afternoon they've got free time. So what Hollis has kept telling them is, don't come back to the house until 5:30. Well, they get done with the interview early, and of course, uh, Lindsay wants to go back and spend uh, romantic time with her boyfriend. She asked to be dropped off. And Colin realizes that Lindsay trusts them. And she, to the point where Colin feels like for the first time in his life, he now has two friends. Okay. So not very good at friend making. Okay. So they kind of go back to the house a little early than they should have. Uh, Hollis is really upset about this. Um, they discover something that the women say that really kind of troubles Lindsay a little bit. And the gossip is that Hollis is selling off some of the property that she owns in addition to the factory. And this worries Lindsay. A couple of different things. One, why is she selling property? And two, she's selling it to a real estate developer. Now, Hollis has said in the past that number one, she'd never sell the land. And number two, if she ever did sell the land, she didn't want to have it turned into some kind of housing development. And the man that she's selling the property to has every intention of turning it into a housing development. So Lindsay doesn't confront her mother directly at this point in the story about what she's heard, but it is very troubling to her. Okay, so even though they kind of break the rule, Hollis is upset with them. They do have dinner together. Um, Hassan and Colin are invited by Lindsay to go and hang out with her friends, TOC, the other boy, and Katrina that night. But of course, Colin's not a big meet and greet party guy. He decides to stay home and work on his theorem. He does. Hassan goes out and hangs out with Lindsay's friends, comes back, tells Colin he had a great time. He even drank a half a beer. And the other girl, Katrina, has taken a liking to him, and he even kissed her, or she kissed him. So, things are going pretty well for Hassan right now. First girlfriend, first kiss, probably first half a beer he's ever drank, which is considered haram, which is against the religious teachings of Islam. So Hassan is kind of breaking out of his shy routine, and he really enjoyed his time with with TOC and the other two boys and Lindsay out just kind of hanging out in the local town. And there was some talk about a future event, which would be to again meet up with the group and to go out um, hunting pigs. So this is not going to happen right away. So there's a few days in between, and of course, Colin and Husan have never shot a gun. They know nothing about guns. They know nothing about hunting. And, they're city kids and they know nothing about the woods or survival in the woods. And they're not too keen on the idea of um running around with guns shooting animals. So they, uh, they decide that, if they do go hunting, they're not going to kill anything. Okay. So they next interview is to go to the factory, and to interview the present day workers there. And they do. And they interview several people in the factory. And the last interviewee is a girl about 25, so she'd be about 6 years older than than Colin, and her name is Catherine. Okay, just what Colin needs to meet another girl named Catherine. And Catherine is a real good looker, but she is older, and she has heard that one of the two boys is a genius. And she comes in and she says, "Which one of you guys is the genius?" And Colin says, "No, I'm not a genius, but you must be referring to me." And she says, "Well, I have a question for you." She says, "You know when you take a shower, and the shower curtain always seems to get sucked into the shower area rather than being blown out. And I've always wondered why that is." And wouldn't you know, Colin actually has an answer for it. And it has to do with the vortex and wind and shower and barometric pressure and all of that sort of thing. And he explains it to Catherine. And she's satisfied with the answer. And that kind of ends their interview for the day. Now, uh, Colin again and Lindsay and Hassan have finished a little early. Uh, they drop Lindsay off at the general store, and Colin and Hassan go back out to kill some time. This time, Hassan is not so successful. Colin thinks he should call Catherine 19. They get into a little bit of an argument. Uh, he goes out to a field on this deserted road so he can get reception for his phone. He does indeed call Catherine. She doesn't answer. He leaves her, I'm still in love with you message. He finishes his message, hangs up the phone, starts walking back to the road. Hassan has already left angrily, and what he does is he goes and picks up Lindsay and then comes back to meet Colin. As Colin's walking back to the road, the phone rings. It's Catherine 19. And she says right away, "Yeah, you know, I think it was really a good idea that we separated." And Colin says, "Hey, did you listen to my message?" She says, "No, no, no need to. No, we made the right decision, and we probably shouldn't talk again for a while." Now, Colin is absolutely devastated. He uh, he walks out to the road. Uh, Lindsay and Hassan coming down the road. They pick him up and take him back to the house. And of course, he's crying. He's all upset. There's absolutely no chance for them to ever get back together again. So I think we'll leave off at this point here. Uh, we will continue on next week with our new assignment. And that's it for today. So thanks for listening. Talk to you later. Goodbye.